metrics. I love metrics, and today we are going to be utilizing said metrics to look at the top 10 games I have played on every platform that tracks them. That's right, we will be looking at the top 10 games I have played on each platform, not in terms of my favorites, but in terms of the time played, and that doesn't always correlate because Cocoon is an incredible game and it's like 2 hours long. Now, of course, I am older than the idea of tracking said metrics, so this video will not contain anything on the PS1, the PS2, the PSP, the PS3, the Game Boy Advance, the DS, or various different MMOs that I have played on PC which have their own launchers. And trust me, those various different MMOs would easily win in terms of playtime compared to anything I'm about to talk about today. I might cover those at the end. The last thing I want to quickly mention up top before we dive right into this quite large list of games is that if you are a non-gamer and you are interested in watching this video, you might hear some numbers which will shock and frighten you. You may be in awe of the amount of time one might sink into the world of video games, and to that I say, if you tracked your time watching TV or movies or listening to music or whatever your chosen leisure activity is, you would probably find that they're about the same as these ones. It is not the end of days. I do not need to touch grass. Actually, maybe I do, but that's besides the point. But most importantly, I do not regret the time I have spent in these games, no matter how big or terrifying those numbers may seem. Those hours are a record of enjoyment. Now let's begin. You may have looked at this video title, which will probably say something along the lines of the most hours I've spent in PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo games, and you might be like, Christian, are you getting old? Are you calling the Switch of a Nintendo? No! We are starting with the 3DS because that has an activity tracker. So yes, we're starting with Nintendo because that will have the smaller times. I have not played a huge amount of 3DS or Switch compared to some people. The Switch was my main console for about a year, and the 3DS I bought when I started uni, and I felt like it was a wasted investment of money based on how much I played the thing, but I am still playing it because I'm currently playing through one of the titles on this list. So I feel better about the 3DS the more I play it. So without further ado, number 10 on the top 10 3DS games I have played is Mario Kart 7 at a mere 7 hours and 57 minutes. First played in 2014, last played in 2022. This is not the Mario Kart I have spent the most amount of time in. In fact, a lot of that game time is probably quite recently, back when they first announced that the 3DS eShop servers was shutting down. I was like, oh no, I really didn't use my 3DS very much, and I went back and I played a bunch of these games, and Mario Kart 7 was one where I was like, I've played a lot of DS, a lot of Wii, and a lot of 8 Deluxe. I forgot its name because I'm a fake gamer. But I have not played a lot of 7, so I went back and played some 7. And yeah, it's fun. It's definitely not my favourite, but it's a solid Mario Kart. At number 9, and I suppose I need to add another caveat here because this also tracks DS games played, but obviously it does not have any way of tracking the amount of time I played those DS games for pre-3DS. But at number 9 is a DS game. It is Pokémon Black version at 9 hours and 15 minutes. And you might be thinking to yourself, Christian, that does not sound like a full playthrough. No, it is not. Pokémon Black and White is one of the generations of Pokémon that I have a lot of trouble getting into. In fact, all of my Pokémon pre-Pokémon Black are still stuck on old hardware because I cannot bring myself to finish Pokemon Black to have the ability to transfer those forwards. And that's becoming more and more of a problem. I did grab the software I needed to transfer them forwards before the eShop shut down, but that software in itself needs servers which won't be up forever, so honestly I might just end up saying goodbye to a bunch of old Pokemon. Or not goodbye, but you know, they'll exist on hardware which won't always work. I know Pokemon Black and White are beloved games. Everyone has their favourites. These ones are not mine. At number 8, clocking in at 12 hours and 47 minutes, we have Pokemon Yellow version, because they put up some of the original Pokemon games on the eShop towards the end of the 3DS life cycle. And my first Pokemon games were Fire Red and Ruby, so I was excited to have an opportunity to go back and play the originals. And I liked this more than I expected. I think Pokemon Yellow has a really fun aesthetic. Like, obviously it's, black and white with some colour, but I don't know, it's just got a really nice visual design even with its own limitations. Again, not a full playthrough, but one I have enjoyed my time with. At number 7, clocking in at just 15 hours and 18 minutes, is one of my most fondly remembered 3DS games. Funny how that works out. Fantasy Life. I love Fantasy Life. For those of you who aren't aware, it's kind of similar to Dragon Quest, except it's not a turn-based RPG. But it's this very charming little half life simulator, half JRPG, I guess. And you take up different jobs and you level them up. And this is a game I want to go back and do a full playthrough of at some point for sure. And I'm excited by Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, I think it's called, which is coming out on the Switch. I don't know if it's this year or next year, but it's an upcoming title. And that's a slightly different spin on it, but it is really exciting to see that Fantasy Life exists and is still a franchise which is being considered as like a thing to make games for. I handled that sentence structure so well. Number 6 on my top 10 3DS games played at 17 hours and 37 minutes is Tomodachi Life, which is a very quirky kind of life simulator game where you've got this island and you put Miis in it. You can design them in the game or you can import them, I do believe. It's been a while since I played, but I remember I put a bunch of my friends and family in the game, but you can't always control who develops feelings for who. Like, obviously you can nudge that stuff along, but if you're not really paying attention to it, it got a little bit awkward. I was like, wait, hang on a minute, these two people shouldn't be falling in love, and it just made me feel a little bit weird, like I was creating a little simulation of my life in the game and changing how things were supposed to turn out. So I deleted that save and I started a new one with all fictional characters. But that aside, it is a fantastic game, and I hope they consider continuing the series in a meaningful way. They tried to make like a Tomodachi Life social network at some point, which didn't really work out, and I think there was some other project they had as well, but I just want to see Tomodachi Life too. Number 5 at 19 hours and 38 minutes with some other data that's quite fun as well, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. Gen 3 is another one of those gens that despite it being my earliest original gen that I ever played, is not one of my favourites, and I find it quite difficult to get into. But I love remakes, and I was really excited by these remakes. That being said, I said it's got some fun data on it, because for 19 hours and 38 minutes played, it's been launched 45 times, and my average playtime is 26 minutes, so this is clearly me struggling to get into the game. I do actually really love the visual design of this particular Pokemon game, and I do still want to beat it and get to the end of it and see what the post-game is like, because I love how in the remakes typically when you get to the post-game they throw in Pokemon from generations that are later than the original one that you're actually playing, and they throw in like a bunch of all the legendaries and a fun way to capture them, and I hear that Alpha Sapphire has a really fun story regarding those, but I've just never gotten around to it. At number 4, we have at 21 hours and 13 minutes, and my number 1 most launched title, the absolute venerated title, the Nintendo eShop. If I had looked ahead on this, I would have not added this to the list, and I would have just shifted everything else up one and included number 11 as number 10, but well, we're here now. The eShop, 21 hours in the eShop, that is a wild number. The amount of time I have spent window shopping is available to me, and maybe that is a number that I'm not particularly pleased with now that I think about it. Makes me wonder what my time is browsing other online video game stores like Steam. Number 3 and rising is at 30 hours and 10 minutes. Dragon Quest VII Fragments of a Forgotten Past. I say and rising because I am currently in the middle of this game. I am in the middle of this adventure and I'm having a bloody brilliant time. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end, in fact, easily, by the end of my playthrough, this will be my number 1 game in the activity log, and I don't think anything will ever dethrone it, because apparently it is a 100-hour long game. So I guess, spoiler alert, the next 2 titles are not 100 hours long. This is what I mean when I say I think I underutilized my 3DS, because I know other people will have like 300, 400, 500 hour long titles in here. Okay, so at number 2 with 36 hours and 3 minutes played is Pokémon X. Now, I've already said that I'm not a huge fan of the 5th Pokemon generation or the 3rd Pokemon generation, and these are 2 Pokemon generations which are very well regarded. Now, Pokemon X is of the 6th Pokemon generation, which is not very well regarded, and I love Pokemon X, and we are now going to get into my hipster problem. I seem to like the Pokemon generations which are more maligned. I'm not just doing this to be contrarian, I legitimately loved Pokemon X, and I legitimately love other Pokemon games which are going to be showing up in these lists later on. It was the first 3DS Pokemon game, and it was the first kind of like 3D Pokemon game. Obviously Pokemon Black did a lot of work with sprites. It was almost like 2D, 3D, 2D HD in that kind of way before its time. I'm not the first person to have said that. I kind of lifted that idea from a Good Vibes Gaming channel quote, I think. But I agree with that. But I just loved this translation of, you know, this world into 3D. And I enjoyed the story of Pokemon X, although I couldn't tell you anything that happened in it at this point. I do think the massive circle of friends you have traveling with you was a little bit too much, but that was also the case in Pokemon Black and White, if I remember rightly. But yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of playing this at uni with my friends, so it's all subjective at the end of the day, isn't it? And finally, for the 3DS, my most played 3DS title, probably to nobody's surprise, at 41 hours and 46 minutes, is Animal Crossing New Leaf. Of course it's Animal Crossing New Leaf. New Leaf is not my favourite Animal Crossing game. In fact, out of all the ones I've played, it might be my least favourite, despite loving it so much. But it's also one of the games that I got the 3DS for. I think I got this 3DS bundled with Animal Crossing New Leaf and Pokemon X, if I'm thinking correctly. And honestly, I don't have a whole lot to say about this, despite it being my number one 3DS game, other than, you know, just of course it is. It's Animal Crossing. It's made for it to be. I can tell you what my least played Nintendo 3DS game is, because it's sitting right over there on my bookshelf looking at me. Dragon Quest VIII, because I will not start that game until I've finished Dragon Quest VII, which means I won't be starting that game for a very long time. Okay, that's my top 10 3DS games. We're now going to be moving on to the Switch, and all stats from this point on have been run through a website which I do not have up right now. Hang on. These stats have been run through a website called exophase.com. This is not an ad, this is just something that's been going around right now, and I've used websites like these before. I use PSN trophies, I use True Achievements to kind of like track my, you know, achievement progression or whatever, and in the past I've used websites like Xfire and Raptor, those are some old names from the past, to like track my game time as I've played particular games, so I'm no stranger to these kinds of websites. But that being said, I don't know anything about, like, you know, if something comes out about this website tracking your data in a terrible way later on, you know, just, I'm not held accountable for that. Just use it at your own risk, but I don't think there's really any risks associated. It just, all it does is scrapes profiles. It doesn't ask for passwords or anything like that. But the interesting thing about this one specifically for Nintendo Switch games is the Nintendo Switch itself does not tell you specifics on your game time. It tells you, oh, you've played for around 30 hours or more, that kind of thing. But also, when you are importing your game data, you have to make sure that you launch your top played Switch games and then sync your profile to it, because it will only sync, I think it's like the 20 most recently launched games, because of however Nintendo handles its API. So I have done that. There is thankfully a tab which you can go to see your most played games, so you just launch them all and then track them, I guess. So we still have a lot to cover. I'm going to just rush right on through. At number 11, because number 10 is the SNES app and that doesn't really count. My 11th, I guess, most played Switch game is Pokemon Brilliant Diamond at 10 hours and 16 minutes. Once again, not a full playthrough. Pokemon Diamond is one of my favourite Pokemon games, but I do not love these remakes. I don't love how they look, although they have grown on me a little bit after I've played some of them. And I probably will end up finishing this game at some point, because there are fairly often times when I crave, like, oh, I want to play some Gen 4. But ultimately, a game that's going to appear later on this list did it much, much better. My 9th most played Switch game at 16 hours and 6 minutes, see, these numbers are bigger than the 3DS, is Super Mario Odyssey. And that is a full playthrough, which is surprising, because I have not played that game since the Switch first came out. Or I guess since that game first came out, and if you had to ask me how long that game was, I would have said 25 to 30 hours. It is my favourite 3D Super Mario game, because it is... Actually, it's the only 3D Super Mario game I've ever finished. I do enjoy... Oh no, I did finish Super Mario 64 DS. I do enjoy the 3D Super Mario games, but I did not grow up a Nintendo kid, per se, so I haven't really gone back and finished most of those yet. But Odyssey, I played when it was new, and it is, for my money, the best 3D Mario out there. It's just a delight. Like, the environments it takes you to, and the actual movement tech, and how you get better at it the more you play, and the way it rewards you for being able to utilize that movement tech with like fun additional extra side content is so good. At number 8, at 16 hours and 36 minutes, I'm afraid we have another unfinished playthrough. Welcome to my gaming catalogue, I guess. It's Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and I love what I've played of that game. I watched a Let's Player play up to the point that I then decided to buy the game and play up to, so everything from this point onwards is going to be new to me, but I just kind of burned out seeing the same thing twice, if you know what I mean, despite really enjoying it. Xenoblade Chronicles is an RPG which feels a lot like an MMO, like a single player MMO in the way that it's designed to me, and obviously that appeals to me quite a lot, and I want to finish this. I want to play Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 3 as well. It's on the backlog, and it's pretty high priority compared to a lot of other things, so hopefully this will not stay at number 8 forever. Number 7, at 17 hours and 58 minutes, is Super Mario Maker 2. I'm actually a little bit surprised by this one, that I've sunk quite that much time into it, but it does have a single player campaign which I've made a decent way through, so that's probably what that is. But yeah, I do enjoy the custom courses, and I was extremely excited for this game before it came out, by the way. But I do tend to find that it's quite hard to find good custom courses, and also the spirit of custom courses in Super Mario Maker 2 isn't quite the spirit of actual Mario levels. Like, they always have to have a gimmick or a quirk, or they're like extremely hard, or they're like a puzzle, or they're like something that a 2-year-old made and it's just random bricks everywhere and a finishing pole. But I did spend some time making, I think I made 3 different levels, or I definitely made 2, and then I gave up on a third because one of them was going to be a recreation of a Crash Bandicoot level, and obviously that would be difficult in Super Mario Maker 2 because Crash Bandicoot isn't a 2D platformer, but I tried my best and I just didn't find it very fulfilling, and obviously I ran into a lot of obstacles, so yeah. Never say never, maybe I'll go back and continue that project, but it's definitely not on the cards. At 18 hours and 43 minutes, also known as position number 6 on the Nintendo Switch list, is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Not my favourite Mario Kart, but it's, you know, it's a pretty close gap between that and my favourite Mario Kart. It's a great one. I love the kind of nature of, you know, it's not quite Super Smash Bros. With like everyone is here, but it's very much especially with the DLC courses, it's very much like this is the biggest and most all-encompassing Mario Kart that there has ever been. And despite being a 10-year-old game or whatever it is, it does not feel like it. It still feels like a very modern and fun Mario Kart game. Number 5, with 29 hours and 34 minutes, is a game I want to spend even more time in, Pokémon Legends Arceus. I love Pokémon Legends Arceus with all my heart. It is where that franchise needs to go in terms of gameplay. Obviously the visuals could use a little bit more work. I do like the art style they went with, but the overall texture work was a little low quality. But this is going to be one of my most fondly remembered Pokemon games for sure. And I haven't completed the Pokedex, there's still stuff I can go and do, but it's one of those things where the main story was such like a journey and an experience that like it had such a sense of finality to, you know, finishing it, that I was like, I don't want to milk this game for every bit of content it's got right now. And now I'm so far away from that journey, I'm like, I don't want to go back and play the dregs of whatever's left, you know? But I do, and I will, because God, we need another Legends game. That is everything wrong with modern Pokemon, apart from the graphics and the frame rate. Pokemon Legends Arceus addresses, in my opinion. It is made for slightly older fans. It's not like a super mature story or anything like that, but it is made for an older audience that, you know, it's made for Pokemon adults, I think. Is that a phrase? We've got Disney adults, now we've got Pokemon adults. Poke adults? Okay, we won't call them that. Happily sitting at position number 4, waggling its little ears around, with 32 hours and 7 minutes, is another Pokemon game. It's Let's Go Eevee Edition, because I'm based and I chose Eevee. I chose him, just like all the most grammatically correct English speakers do. Fun journey with this game. I played this one for like the first half of the game and went, it's just Gen 1 again. And then like a year later, I was like, oh yeah, I never finished that. And then I went back and finished it, and I was like, this was fucking amazing. when are we going to get Let's Go Sinnoh Edition, please? I would like that. It is Gen 1 again, but it's got some differences, it's got some quirks, and it's a game that's made to try and introduce users who have played Pokemon Go into the more mainline Pokemon franchise. So it has kind of stuff like it's more about catching Pokemon than it is about battling them. But in my mind, when I think of kind of like mainline Pokemon and what I would call like mainline spin-offs, in the center you've got like the main games, and then like for like the more mature / gaming focused crowd you've got the Legends series, and then for like the more casual crowd you've got the Let's Go series. And I just hope that Nintendo and Game Freak see it that way as well and continue to move the franchise forward in that direction, because I think all three across the board are really fun ways to play Pokemon. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's much indication that they will continue Let's Go or Legends at this point, but we do have a Pokemon Presents in like less than a week, so we'll see. In third place, at 36 hours and 0 minutes, a game which is going to sound a lot less accomplished when you hear what it is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That's right, it's not a full playthrough. In fact, it's about half a playthrough, and then a live stream playthrough part 1, and then a video series playthrough part 1 is what that is. That being said, I do have a lot of love for Breath of the Wild, like legitimately. I have very little interest in Tears of the Kingdom because I haven't finished Breath of the Wild, but when I think of Breath of the Wild, it reminds me, because I got it with my Switch, it reminds me of that magical kind of Switch launch period before the console felt super underpowered and super bloated with just awful eShop games that nobody cares about. It reminded me of that magical period around 2017 when the Switch was like this crazy new bit of technology with a really interesting and exciting launch game, and like anything was possible, and like, oh, Nintendo is good again. And I feel like we've really gotten away from that in recent years, which is sad. But very specifically, I want to call out the sound design of Breath of the Wild, because I don't hear enough people talking about it. The sound design is so unique and atmospheric, and just something about specifically like the menu sounds and the little shrine sounds when you find them and stuff. Obviously this is probably at this point nostalgia talking, Jesus, but it sends me right back to when I first got my Switch, and it's, yeah, I have a special place in my heart for this game that I have not finished. Now for a game I have finished and then some. Sitting at second place with 75 hours and 18 minutes, quite a jump, is Pokémon Sword. Remember when I said that I like the entries that people don't? Pokémon Sword is one of my favourite mainline Pokémon games. It's fantastic, and I will not hear a word against it. No, it's fine, you can criticize it, it's fine. Obviously not the prettiest Pokemon game. Obviously not the best texture work again. Obviously some frame rate problems. And obviously a precursor of problems to come with Pokemon Violet, which I do own and is not on this list. But I loved the Galar region, I loved that generation of Pokemon. The story was simplistic, but I really enjoyed it and appreciated it. I enjoyed the characters as well and appreciated them. I really liked the DLC. Like, this was their first time doing DLC instead of just like a weird third extra release with a little bit of extra content in it. And I remember going into the Isle of Armor DLC and feeling underwhelmed, but then slowly falling in love with it, and then being like, oh, actually this is pretty good, and then really enjoying the Crown Tundra DLC as well. And I've still got a lot of stuff I can do in those games. I didn't do a huge amount of the Dynamax adventures, even though I really liked the system when I first played it. I do worry that with nobody probably doing those now, I don't know how they're going to fare with just NPCs. But I thought that was a really fun way of doing the kind of post-game, here, go get the legendaries from all the older games or whatever. And yeah, just Pokemon Sword is going to be, like, so to recap, my favourite Pokemon games from the mainline entries in the series are Pokemon Diamond, Pokemon Soul Silver, I didn't mention that one, Pokemon X, and Pokemon Sword. So we skipped the very much beloved Sun and Moon there, and the very much beloved Black and White, but those are mine, okay, I'm sorry. And finally, in first place, if you remember my 3DS list, you will not be surprised by this either, sitting at 98 hours and 21 minutes, it is, of course, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Animal Crossing New Horizons launched at the perfect time during a worldwide pandemic when we all really needed to connect with one another. Honestly, what can I say about this game that hasn't already been said? Like, yes, obviously, came out at the perfect time for humanity, we all kind of needed it, but I was already a long-time Animal Crossing fan, and it was a delight to see so many other people be introduced to the series for the first time. Like, it was legitimately wonderful. And yeah, there was this magical time when it felt like everyone was playing Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I was as social as I've ever been in a video game, just like messaging friends and visiting their islands and hanging out with them, and obviously building up my own and meeting my own villagers and having my own magical experience. I still maintain that there is something in earlier Animal Crossing games that is missing here in a way that I can't quite put my finger on, but that's probably nostalgia talking if I'm thinking about that objectively. I also tinkered with the DLC, the Happy Home Designer DLC or whatever it's called, and that is a powerful bit of DLC. I still haven't played through most of it, but I spent a long time customizing the first few houses which I had access to, and I remember, because I never played the 3DS entry, I remember thinking like, yeah, it's just, you know, how much customization really is there to an Animal Crossing villager house? It's not that much. And then I sunk like a few hours into just the first house, making everything perfect and being like, oh, and then I could put like a little bookshelf there and a little lamp and oh, look, it's so cute, little reading nook for this particular little villager. Fuck, man, that's some good shit, you know? So there we are, my Nintendo games. We haven't crested triple digits yet. Should we change that? We're going to go in order, by the way, of the least to the most amount of hours played across the systems. So next up we have PSN, except that's going to be PS4 because I do not own a PS5, and while, you know, this Exophase website does include PS3 data, sadly, hours played are not part of PS3 data. So I can add a fun statistic here. I wasn't adding the statistic for the Switch because you had to manually go into every Switch game and then, you know, as I already mentioned, sync the profile to them, so it's not actually every Switch game on my profile, just the top 10. But for the other platforms here, I can add cumulative hours played across the entire platform. So for the PS4, I've played 616 hours of my PS4, which is surprisingly few now that I think about it. There are individual games that I've spent more time in. Not in this video, that's a bit of a spoiler, but not in this video, but certainly MMOs. Okay, so my top 10 PlayStation 4 games. Are you ready for this one? You know, you might be like, why aren't you doing these different top 10 lists in different videos? I just kind of wanted to rip this all in one video. Sitting in 10th place with 20 hours and 3 minutes played is Doom, the 2016 edition of Doom. Confession time. This is a multi-platform ownership deal. I already owned this game on PC, but for some reason, I just really wanted to play it on PS4 as well, so I picked it up, hopefully secondhand, and played through the entire game again here. I think 2016's Doom is an absolute treat if you're a fan of the genre. The atmosphere, the just graphic design, the sound design of like the shotgun and like the music and everything, and just the fast-paced combat, it's so good. Now if I remember right, I think it was the PS4 version, I was going for 100% completion in terms of trophies, but unfortunately I had a glitch which affected a trophy where to fix the glitch I would just basically have to replay the entire game, so I was very much put off of getting any of the other optional trophies, but you know, I liked the game enough to try and go for completion, so put it there. At number 9 with 22 hours and 13 minutes played is Gran Turismo Sport. Hi, by the way, I like boring racing games. I really appreciated Gran Turismo Sport's little time trial sections. I don't remember what they're called now, but they have these little sections where it's not an entire racetrack. You're not just like doing laps around a track for the best times. It's like these like particular sections with these particular vehicles, and they've got leaderboards and stuff and trophies attached to them, and it was just a really fun time just doing that trial and error. It reminded me a little bit of Trackmania, which is a series I really enjoy, which is kind of built around that kind of thing. Also, I obviously played this long after they fixed it up because people were complaining that it wasn't like a traditional Gran Turismo with like a campaign mode and everything. By the time I got to it, it felt pretty recognizable. At 8th place is another game that I've played on multiple platforms with 22 hours and 28 minutes played, No Man's Sky. I originally got No Man's Sky on PC, but I didn't have a good PC at the time, so I couldn't run it very well, so I was excited to get it on a platform that could. That being said, the PS4 also did not run this very well. I did not have a PS4 Pro, but I did spend a decent amount of time in this game, and I'm wondering if it'll pop up on other lists. I did have a brief look at them, but I can't quite remember. So yeah, it's difficult to talk about this game just the PlayStation version, because I think all my memories are mixed in from playing it on PC and also through Game Pass on Xbox and stuff, but if you haven't already played it, or if you somehow haven't heard about the rebound success story that is No Man's Sky, game launched like trash, game is now probably the space exploration game we always wanted it to be and more. It's another one of those games where I'm like, what more can be said about it that hasn't already been said? In 7th place, another game that I've played on multiple platforms, but this one perhaps a little bit more justifiably. At 22 hours and 39 minutes played, it is Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. And you might be thinking to yourself, why would you play this on console when you've already played it on PC? Well, if you've never played the console port of Diablo 3, it's legitimately fantastic. Like, the way they mapped everything to controller and the little tweaks they did to make it playable on controller is actually phenomenal. And it is like a viable alternate method of playing the game in kind of like if you want a little bit more of a laid back, you know, on the sofa experience or whatever. Don't take that out of context. That is a fun way to be playing Diablo 3. And also a lot of these games that I own on multiple platforms, I'm still a bit like this, but definitely a few years back, I was very much like oh, if I own it here, I can get the achievements over here, because I'm someone who likes to chase after achievements. And while the PC version had its own in-game achievements, it didn't have any kind of like, you know, it wasn't on Steam, it didn't have like Steam achievements obviously, and I like having like a meta profile with achievements, not to show off or brag to people because nobody ultimately cares, but just to kind of progress my own profile and look back on things. I don't know, that might be weird, but I know there's other people like me in that regard. I'm currently wrestling with that very feeling regarding Dragon Quest Builders 1. Just got launched on Steam. I'm like, I have it on Switch, I don't need it on Steam, but I want it on Steam. Anyway, before moving on, speaking of games which will not be on these lists because they do not have game time tracked, but I have spent easily triple digits of hours in Diablo 3 on PC, for sure. Anyway, in 6th place with 23 hours and 32 minutes, God of War. Basically just a God of War playthrough in it. I didn't really do the extra stuff because I found it a little bit too hard. I tried one of the Valkyries and I was not very good at it. But yeah, God of War is an absolute standout experience. I remember raving about it by the time I had finished that game, and you know, I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel a huge pull to go and grab a PS5 to play Ragnarok or anything like that, but I am interested in Ragnarok because, you know, the PS4 God of War game is just fantastic. If you haven't played it, it's definitely a must-play. In 5th place, a little bit more of an unexpected entry probably, with 34 hours and 36 minutes, it's Need for Speed Rivals. You may be with the majority of people in a firm belief that Need for Speed hasn't been a good racing game since the PS2 era, and I would not fault you for that. But I think that there are the occasional Need for Speed games between then and Need for Speed Heat which have also been pretty damn good. Like the Most Wanted reboot on PS3, I really enjoyed playing that game online. And I think they were selling a triple pack of Rivals, self-titled, and Payback, is it called? For like a $5 at one point. So I was like, yeah, I'll grab those. And yeah, I just basically really enjoyed completing Need for Speed Rivals. I was listening to a podcast called The History of Rome because I'm a fan of history. Never finished that podcast and probably didn't retain much of its information, but I really enjoyed listening to it while I was chasing perfection in Need for Speed Rivals. Probably the weirdest combination of things. Like, I wonder how many other Need for Speed Rivals players listened to the History of Rome podcast while they were racing around. But yeah, not one of the best titles in the series, but thoroughly enjoyable in my opinion. I've been tempted to load it up on Game Pass and do it again on Xbox. In 4th place, one of my favourite games of all time, at 37 hours and 40 minutes, is Assassin's Creed 2. Another game that I have perfected here. But this isn't the first time I've perfected this game. I'm pretty sure I perfected either the PS3 or the PC version. But yeah, the PS4 version, not the craziest of remasters or remakes. It's basically just Assassin's Creed 2 again, except everyone's faces look like it's been moulded by clay. Potentially a downgrade, to be honest. But yeah, the opening chapter in Ezio's story will forever be one of the best gaming stories ever told. I also, by the way, in case that sounded bad, I also really love Brotherhood and Revelations, but they're just not on this list. In 3rd place, getting a bronze medal and also being a game completion, with 44 hours and 41 minutes played, it is The Crew 2. Again, not the best racing game out there, but I think this game has so much going for it that people don't really give it the time of day for. Yeah, sure, let's go with that. Having the entirety of America to scale, and being able to transform into an airplane whenever you like, or a boat whenever you like, was just brilliant. And I think moving away from both of those things for the sequel has only done that series harm. I haven't actually played the sequel yet, but, you know, people have accused it of being a Forza Horizon wannabe, and these are two aspects of the game that made it stand out from Forza Horizon, made it unique, and they've just stripped them back for the sequel, so you know, whatever I guess, but I really enjoyed The Crew 2. In second place, and my vote for most anticipated Game Pass Activision title, in my opinion, at 53 hours and 18 minutes is Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. I'll wager there's probably not a whole lot of people who have sunk that much time into this particular game, but oh my god, it did live service so well. So yeah, this is one of my favourite remakes of all time. Basically, I grew up with Crash Team Racing and Crash Nitro Kart, and when I found out that they had put the Nitro Kart stages in Crash Team Racing, there was no foreknowledge of this. They didn't talk about this before the game came out. I lost my goddamn mind, I was so excited. And on top of that, they had a fairly robust seasonal structure for a year or two, where they would add a new track and a new character and a bunch of new customizations in the store, and before you freak out, they were not purchasable. They promised that you would never be able to purchase these customizations, but at some point, an Activision executive caught whiff of a game that was not being monetized, and they made it so that you could buy Wumpa Fruit, which is the currency. You could buy bundles of that in the store, but in my opinion, and to my memory, I don't think they changed the actual Wumpa Fruit cost of anything in the store. So while you could now buy it for real money, it wasn't exactly designed in that way that, you know, online currencies usually are, in that you get them trickled out to you to make you want to buy them. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it remained the same. And yeah, I really liked the unique skins they came up for. I'm gushing too much about this game, we don't have time, but I really liked the customizations they came up with in the store, and I played a whole bunch of it online. Really excited to do that journey over again when it comes out on Game Pass, whenever that's gonna be. And finally, my number one PlayStation 4 game, in terms of time played at least, but also probably just in general, actually, with 128 hours and 54 minutes played, which actually took me by surprise. It's Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now, don't get me wrong, this game's not perfect. For one thing, it did not need to be this long. It had some massive pacing issues in the middle, and in my opinion, this was absolutely to try and sell time saver packs in the Ubisoft store. Just when the story was really heating up, and I did really enjoy the story, it got to a point where suddenly, like, the level requirements to continue the story were jumping up by 2 or 3 levels at a time, and you either had to spend hours and hours and hours suddenly side questing when you didn't want to, or you could just, you know, pop in the store and buy one of those handy dandy time saver packs, which I did not. But then I feel the same way about Yakuza Like a Dragon, and that doesn't sell anything, so maybe I'm just really bad at doing side quests in single player RPGs. I get too, you know, blinded, or what's the thing? Blinkered. I get too blinkered, that's the thing that horses wear. Now, I did the first DLC for this, and I started the second, and I thoroughly loved the premise of the second DLC. It blew me away. I was so excited to, and then I just fell off it, and I still haven't done it. So I haven't actually done everything that there is to do in this game, or at least not the game with the DLCs, the Ultimate Edition of the game or whatever. But it is tied with Assassin's Creed 2 as my favourite Assassin's Creed, and that is no small feat. I love this game so much. I perfected the main story as well, or the main game I should say. So I got all the achievements in that, which is probably another reason why my game time is so high. It's not all, you know, running around chopping people up, being a cool mercenary or whatever, or Mistios. Part of it is just like spending hours just diving underwater looking for chests so that I can finish the damn game. There are plenty of other games which I think of when I think of my PS4 that aren't on this list, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 and Horizon Chase Turbo, but I didn't play them enough. They weren't long enough. They didn't go on this list. But there you go, there's some honourable mentions, I guess, as if this video wasn't long enough already. Hey, so I'm listening back to this in editing, and unfortunately I'm going to have to slide in here and say that this PlayStation 4 list, at least, might not be entirely accurate, because I noticed a few omissions and I went back and checked, and there's some weird stuff going on the website. Basically, I was like, oh, that's weird, Spider-Man isn't on here, why isn't Spider-Man on here? And I've gone and I've checked on the website, and while it has all of my achievements, it says I've only played the game for 7 minutes. So I went and I checked the Ratchet & Clank PS4 reboot game, and that one doesn't have any time attached to it at all. So while I would say that everything seems to be correct with the other profiles you're about to hear, for some reason, the PSN titles didn't seem to have their times tracked the entire time. But I would still say, apart from maybe Spider-Man and Ratchet & Clank, that still sounded pretty much correct. So anyway, on with the rest of the video. Now, I have played 3,572 cumulative hours on Steam, which is the most out of all of these, but I am doing this one before Xbox because the top game of this list has less hours than the top game on Xbox. Does that make sense? That makes sense. We'll start with Steam. Also, it just kind of works out because Xbox is kind of my main platform right now, and Steam was before that, and PlayStation 4 was before that, and Switch was before that, so kind of, it's just kind of nice like that. Oh, I see we've got a few caveats in this one as well. Okay, this will be interesting. Okay, so at number 10, with 65 hours and 39 minutes played, those are the bottom levels of numbers we are playing with right now, is Gary's mod. I can remember none of that, if I'm being honest. Apparently the last time I launched this game was 2015. But yeah, I probably played a lot of Gmod Murder, I probably played a lot of Trouble in Terrorist Town, I probably played a lot of Prop Hunt, I probably spent a decent amount of time just fucking around in the sandbox mode. At number 9 is a familiar face, 70 hours and 7 minutes played of No Man's Sky. As I already mentioned earlier in this video, I played more No Man's Sky over here on Steam, so we can basically skip that one. At number 8 with 71 hours and 7 minutes played is Quake Champions. That's right, I'm a Quake Champions apologist. I grew up on the Unreal Tournament series, and I was really excited for whatever they were going to do with the new Unreal Tournament game, and then Epic said, oh look, Fortnite's making lots of money, and they killed it. So Quake Champions was my safe haven for arena shooters that were modern. Funnily enough, until about a year ago, I never had a system that was beefy enough to really run Quake Champions, because it's not a very well optimized game in my opinion. Or maybe I just didn't have the specs for it, who knows, but now that I have played it, I'm like, oh, people have played this game way more than me and they're better than me and I don't want to play it anymore. At number 7 is an idle game, and yet has 94 hours and 57 minutes. It's Adventure Capitalist, and the reason I have so much goddamn game time in this thing is because I refuse to cave to microtransactions. This thing was obviously designed to try and sell people on microtransactions so that they would get past the weird pacing issues in the middle and continue growing their capitalist society or whatever the hell that game's about. It's been a while. But in a testament to my stubbornness, I perfected this game without giving it a single goddamn penny. Time spent. At number 6, with 106 hours and 36 minutes played, we have Terraria. I was thinking about Terraria just the other day. I love Terraria. Back when Minecraft was new, Terraria was the thing that did what Minecraft didn't. It gave you a direction, it gave you things to work towards other than just like new metals. It didn't exactly have a quest system, but it definitely had a much clearer progression path and unlock path than Minecraft. And it's weird to kind of compare those two games now because they're clearly two very different games, but there weren't a lot of kind of open world survival crafting games back then. And Terraria was kind of just the alternative to Minecraft back then. And I love Minecraft a lot as well, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I very much think of Terraria fondly, and I kind of want to do another playthrough. I've messed around a few times on this channel with like ideas for like playthroughs or whatever, but I never finished that game. There's still a lot of stuff in that game I've never actually done, so there's probably still a lot of content to be mined there. I say, like some kind of corporate overlord. At number 5, with a caveat and 127 hours and 24 minutes played, it's Halo the Master Chief Collection. I was first able to play Halo when they first ported this thing to Steam. I had never owned an Xbox in my life at that point, and I played through Halo Reach and 1 and half of 2, I think, on PC. And I also played a whole bunch of multiplayer on PC. But I have played a whole bunch more on Xbox, and I'm sure that'll pop up in the top 10 list. I would be shocked if it didn't. I love Halo. I'm in a Halo mood. I should boot up Halo. I still play the Master Chief Collection even alongside Infinite. I think they're both fantastic. Well, one's a collection of games, but I think there's merit to playing older Halo games still. At number 4, with another caveat, and 134 hours and 1 minute played, it's RuneScape. And I'm surprised to see it here because I thought I'd only tinkered with it on Steam, but no. I've played 134 hours of it on Steam. Those are rookie numbers. Those are low XP numbers. I have played far more RuneScape than that. But yeah, when they launched it on Steam, I was excited. I connected my account to it and everything. And then I think for some reason related to Prime drops back when I had Prime, I unlinked it and I don't play it through Steam now. But yeah, it's a thing. It's on Steam. That's what I've played of it on Steam. Hooray. Definitely in the 4 digits when it comes to RuneScape, not 3. We're in the thousands of hours, easily. I played that game since I was 12, come on. At number 3, with another caveat, and 159 hours and 25 minutes, it is the original version of The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. And not to brag, but I got every achievement in the game. Obviously I love Skyrim. Obviously it is one of my favourite games of all time. It actually sat just below the top 10 lists on my Nintendo Switch and on my PlayStation, but here it is on this one. Guess what? It's also below my top 10 list on this one. My Skyrim Special Edition is sitting at 59 hours and 46 minutes played at the 11th position in the Steam list. Fosrodar, again and again and again and again and again. Number 2, at 172 hours and 55 minutes, it's Destiny 2, a game that I do not play anymore and do not wish to rant about, but I stopped playing around the time of Beyond Light because I didn't agree with their vaulting system in terms of guns and content. And despite being tempted a few times, I have not touched it since. And finally, at number 1, with a caveat, at 423 hours and 4 minutes, it is The Elder Scrolls Online. This game is all of my playtime up until the Greymore expansion. I haven't touched it since then, but yeah, I used to be a PC player, and I played it through Steam, so it is my number 1 Steam game. But I am now an Xbox player, and spoiler alert, you will see this game again. Remember when I said that MMOs easily had my top playtime? Yeah, you've got a hint of that in the Steam list here. And now, finally, let's see if we can keep this video under an hour long. Finally, we get to Xbox. You know, it's actually quite impressive because I've only had my Xbox since the Series S launched, or I guess my Xbox account, so only like 2 or 3 years. And despite this, I've already racked up a cumulative total of 3,014 hours played on the account. That almost matches my Steam account, which I've had for far longer. But I guess to be fair, Steam isn't all PC games, so I've got that going for me. For a second, I thought Oblivion was in second place, but I just hadn't organised it by playtime yet. Oblivion's not in the top 10, but there you go. Honorary mention to Oblivion. Okay, I've got to mention it because it's in 11th place and it's only a few hours behind 10th place. At number 11, we do have Starfield with 51 hours and 12 minutes. I can't just not talk about it. It needs to win something. Okay, so for Xbox, in 10th place, rather familiarly, at 53 hours and 42 minutes is The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition. Fosrodar, again and again and again and again and again. Are you starting to see why I didn't finish Breath of the Wild? I was too busy fucking playing Skyrim. Sorry, I'm just looking through this top 10 list. This is a good list. I like this list. At number 9, with 56 hours and 16 minutes played, is Assassin's Creed Origins. And I've finished the main story on this one, and I want to get 100% on it, but it is a grind to finish this game, or to perfect it, I guess I should say. But yeah, if you heard me glow about Assassin's Creed Odyssey and you were wondering if I'd played Origins, yes I have, and I also love Origins. I love this version of Assassin's Creed, this open world RPG, with the exception of I have not played a whole bunch of Valhalla yet, but I do want to go back and play that one too. At number 8, with 60 hours and 46 minutes played, is Forza Horizon 5. I bloody love Forza Horizon, and I was so excited for Forza Horizon 5, but I actually have not spent a huge amount of time in this game compared to the others. I'm gonna have to scroll up now and make sure I'm not going to eat my words. Okay, Forza Horizon 3 is in 13th place, but I did get that one after 4. Anyway, if you like open world, I guess objective-driven games, but you're not crazy about racing games, and you have Game Pass, give Forza Horizon a go because it might surprise you. It's really not like a racing sim at all. It's like a good old-fashioned open-world PS2 arcade racer is kind of what it feels like. In 7th place, a blemish on this list, not really, at 73 hours and 57 minutes is Overwatch 2. I played most of this before they announced that there wouldn't be a single-player campaign mode, and then despite not really being excited for the single-player campaign mode, this kind of soured my taste for Overwatch 2, and I haven't really played it much since. What's interesting about this game time is I don't remember playing a huge amount of it on Xbox. I mostly played it on PC, but I guess that's just the nature of these online games. You sink so much time into them before you even notice. I think this was also because for a while my Xbox had better specs than my PC. That's why I was playing it on Xbox, and I think I wanted to get some Xbox achievements in there too. At number 6, with 74 hours and 16 minutes played, which are rookie numbers for this series, these hours will surely rise, is Diablo 4. I've talked to death about how I feel about Diablo 4. It's complicated, but it is a Diablo game. first and foremost, and it is a good Diablo game, and I really enjoy my time in it, is the diplomatic way of putting that. If you are a stranger to what I am talking about, I think the story had some pacing issues, and the endgame has lots of issues, and the seasonal stuff, and the microtransactions. Anyway, moving on. Man spends lots of time in game he doesn't love. More at 11. Except I do love it. It's complicated. Hello again at number 5. 97 hours and 22 minutes played as Forza Horizon 4, which, as I've already alluded to, was the first in the series that I played, and I fell head over heels in love with it. I think I bought this game on PC. This was back when Game Pass was still relatively new, and I don't know if it just wasn't on Game Pass or if I didn't really like the concept of Game Pass at the time, but I remember I bought this game on launch. I kind of caught wind of what it was about, and I went, oh shit, I need that in my life, and I bought like the Ultimate Edition, like I had to spare dough at the time. And my biggest complaint with this game at this point is I've sunk so much time into this game for the genre that it is, that when I get into this game and I'm like, oh, I want to play some more Forza Horizon 4, there isn't much left to do in it. I should probably just play more Horizon 5. I don't know what that was. At number 4, with 159 hours and 51 minutes, that's right, I'm a Halo Infinite apologist, don't at me. No, seriously though, the multiplayer is bloody fantastic, and I'm so glad it exists, because arena shooters are pretty much dead, and Halo's multiplayer has always been like pretty close to an arena shooter, which I think is why I like it so much. I mean, depending on your definition, it is an arena shooter, but also I really enjoyed the campaign. And yeah, I guess we should move straight on to the next one, because sitting quite happily in third place with 275 hours and 16 minutes played, once again, is Halo the Master Chief Collection. So if you combine that with my Steam hours, that's over 400 hours in Halo, which still doesn't actually top the next entry, but there you go. As I've already mentioned, there's not much else to say. I love Halo's multiplayer, it reminds me of arena shooters, and I really enjoy their campaigns as well, and they're just endlessly replayable, so yay, woo. Man in green armor, look at him go. Remember how we just did the little addition thing? We added up 2 different versions of a game's hours? We might have to do that again, because at number 2 with 403 hours and 40 minutes is a familiar face. It's the Elder Scrolls Online Tamriel Unlimited. I mentioned that my Steam hours were everything up to Greymore. Well, my Xbox hours are everything beyond, and replays of the original content again. I love ESO, and I have played almost every story that it has to offer, and I am so happy about that. So adding up the 2 versions, that's about 826 hours total, and that really gives you an impression what I mean when I say, you know, the MMOs that mostly aren't tracked in this video easily surpass the hours of all of these other games. They are what I spend the most time in. They are designed to be the games that people who play them spend the most time in. I would say ESO's biggest strength is that most of those hours are narrative content, and for an MMO, that's a massive achievement. But you may be wondering, Christian, what is your number 1 most played Xbox games, and why are you slightly embarrassed? ESO kind of wins out of like combined lists. Like if we combine the entries together, then yeah, ESO has the most game time. But out of all the single entries on this list, number 1 with 461 hours and 40 minutes played so far is Fortnite. Now hey, remember back at the start of the video when I said that time played does not always correlate to like favorite game of all time? Nah, I'm kidding, I'm not really embarrassed. It's a little embarrassing in just like settings of people who aren't gamers, and like being like, oh, you know, their perception of Fortnite is that it's this kids game, and in some ways it is, but it's this kids game that all the Zoomers play, that have dances and have a massive cash shop and all this stuff. But it's also just a really fucking good battle royale since they removed building. And to be honest, I have spent a decent amount of money in this over the years as well. Not gonna, I don't love saying that out loud, but I can't pretend it's not the case. But you know, it's not like I go in there and drop hundreds of pounds every day or whatever. It's like, you know, maybe like 10 quid a month. It's basically just like having a subscription to an MMO, but because it looks different, it feels different. Anyway, I'm not ashamed that this is at the top of my list, because those 461 hours are almost completely represented by time playing with my friends. I very rarely boot up Fortnite unless I am in a voice call with Reese and Molly, and we have had so many fucking good times in that game. Ah, it's so cool having like my top game out of all of these just be good times with friends. So yeah, that about does it. If you're wondering about Epic Games, I did kind of sync that profile up too, but I own hardly anything on Epic, have played hardly anything on Epic, and I don't think I've touched it since they started tracking hours. So that's a big fat 0 for Epic Games. Oh, also, I mentioned MMOs, so obviously we've seen the Elder Scrolls Online here. I know that I have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours in Final Fantasy XIV, and I know that I have spent thousands of hours in RuneScape 3, Old School RuneScape, and World of Warcraft. And I regret nothing. I'm not going to ramble on for too much longer because we are approaching an hour, but this has been a really fun look back on like my most played games. And I hope it's given you some sense of the kinds of games that I enjoy playing. Obviously there are some that don't really appear here because they're shorter games by nature, such as platforming games or older games which were never tracked back in the day. But if you're curious about how I tracked the time on these games, especially for the Switch, you can find the link to the website in the description below. Thank you for watching, leave a like if you listened to this entire ramble I guess, and I will see you in whatever I make next.